And we are recording. Take it away, Noemi.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Noemi Mendez. I'm with the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'm happy to come and speak to you all about all the cool data that the census collects, and then how you can take the information that we have on our website so you can use it on, for your analysis, for your grant writing, for anything that you might need census data for. So I'm going to go ahead. So how do I go ahead and start my presentation?
On your screen, you should have a share screen.
Okay, so I'm going to stop your screen sharing. Okay, thanks. Okay. So again, so I give this talk pretty often, but I updated it a little bit for some of the new stuff that we have going on. So this is me. My name's Noemi, like not having an Emmy, Noemi Mendez. And I'm a data dissemination specialist, and I've been with the Census Bureau for about 16 years now. So what I do is I work with the public to find and access all of the different types of data that the Census Bureau collects. So my background's in GIS and geography, so I've worked a lot with GIS users, with grant writers, with businesses and other educational institutions. I attended both Syracuse University and City University, New York Hunter College. So what else do I do when I'm not working with the census? I actually teach. I teach a couple of GIS and data visualization courses, one for Johns Hopkins and the other one for Temple University.
So now you can see who's in the room. You have a pretty broad range of folks, from experts to never used it before.
And that's usually what I get. Yeah, I'm used to working with all sorts of groups. So, so for some of you who may have used our data before, hopefully this is a refresher, but usually everybody comes along with something they've never known or seen before. So this is my agenda for the time that we have. I'm going to do a brief primer on the census, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our geography and the types of data we collect. And then I'm going to do a demo of our new site called Data.Census.Gov. It's been around since March. So for those of you that have used American Fact Finder in the past, that was sunsetted in March. So that's no longer available. So most of the data is being migrated to the new platform. Okay, so a little bit about my agency. We serve as the leading source of quality data about the nation's people and the economy. So we're mostly known for our demographic data. That's the data about people, but we have a lot of information about the economy, such as information on businesses and types of products that are being created in the US. So everyone, you've been hearing a lot about the census this past year. Census Day was April 1st, 2020, and we are still in the midst of collecting the decennial data because of, we've had some issues with some operations because of COVID, so they're starting up operations again. But luckily, I think about 62% of the nation has been using the online tool to collect their census data, so we want to thank you for that. But just a little bit of background about the census. So the Constitution was signed on September 17th in 1787. So it is in the US Constitution that every 10 years, the nation has to go out and do an enumeration of all the residents. So that's in Article 1, Section 2. The formal Census Act was signed in March 1790, and 1790 was the first time that the United States conducted a census. And we've been conducting the decennial census every 10 years since that. So the census is really the first country in the world that implements a comprehensive and a regular count of its population. So I'm going to talk about two different types of data here for this particular talk. We collect every year about, depending on funding, 100. We do data collection for over 100. I think I heard 130 different censuses and surveys throughout the year. So I'm going to talk to you today about demographic data. That's the American Community Survey. And I'm going to talk to you about our economic data, okay? So I want to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we have available. So one of the things, and some of the feedback I get a lot from census data users is, you go to our website and it's very overwhelming. And I totally agree. We've done some revamping of our website. So if you haven't been on there lately, we are trying to make it more streamlined. So we have a really good appendix where you can just, hop through by letter and say, I want to look for data on poverty. You can click the letter P and it'll show you, it'll kind of tell you, here's the poverty data. You click on the hyperlink and it'll take you to the page. We have a really neat search bar where you can type in a particular item and it'll take you right to the page. So we're trying to make it a lot more user friendly. So my job as a data dissemination specialist is to really act as a guide to sort of help you find the information that you're looking for, okay? So I kind of want to give you a foundation as to what we have available. So let's say you have some questions regarding data for a particular community. You may have questions like, how many people live in my community? What are their races and ethnicities? How many people are single parents? How many are grandparents or primary caregivers? What languages are being spoken in my community? How many people are in poverty? Okay. So now to move on to the second part of my agenda, I'm going to show you how to use census data. So there's a few things you need to know before you dive into our website and just start pulling data. You need to understand a little bit about how the census does geography. So I get lots of questions like, oh, I want data for Baltimore. So I'll say, okay, do you want the county or do you want the city? Do you want maybe some zip codes in the city, or do you want data by census tract, okay? Because each of those levels of geography dictate how many hits you're gonna get on a particular topic. So it's easier if you could narrow it down. You wanna know your subject, right? Do you want that demographic data or do you want the economic data? And then your time frame. Do you want every 10-year census? Do you want the latest American Community Survey or an economic report, or one of the many hundreds of reports that we produce for our data? So the better you can kind of like wind it down, the more successful you're going to be in getting your census data. So I like this slide because it really gives you a good understanding of the relationships among the Census Bureau geographies. We collect data all the way from the entire nation as a whole down to the block level. We also have data for our in American Indian areas. We have data for Puerto Rico. We have data for all different types of geographies, but they all kind of come from the same hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom. The lowest level of geography data that you can get is a block. So a census block could be the block that you live in, right? Like I live outside of Philadelphia in a suburban community. My block where I live on is a census block, and they're all numbered. And there are census blocks from cover the entire nation. So for instance, this is census block 3014, and you can see that the border of the block is, we use streets, we use rivers, we use anything we prefer a visible feature to help us delineate or draw those blocks. So not all data items are down at the block level. If you're going to be using our demographic data, especially the American Community Survey, the block is too small for us to give you data. And we'll go more into that a little bit later, but it has to do with the threshold of the number of people that are in these geographies. The census is not allowed to release personally identifiable information for anyone. So if our geographies are too small and there's a risk that an individual might be identified, we do not release data down to that level. And that's part of Title 13, which is the US code that the Census Bureau abides by. The next geography up are block Groups, so block groups are blocks put together. So imagine you're playing with Legos and you have a small Lego that is a block, but you want to get data for a neighborhood or a community. You can put, the census puts those blocks together to form these block groups. So all of these blocks in this block group all start with the number 3. And block groups have between 600 and 800 people at that level. So at the block group level, you can start getting demographic data. Then the next geography up is the census tract, which is my personal favorite, and those are those block groups put together. I caution people against using zip codes, or as census calls them, zictas, because the census, the zicta, it's a zip code tabulation area. It's an approximation of a zip code. Zip codes really are used for the Postal Service to deliver data, so it's not really in a polygon shape. We can't really release data by that geography. So we've created the zictas, which you can use in approximation. I push people towards census tracts because census geography, such as blocks and block groups and census tracts, only change once every 10 years before the decennial census. So you'll always have what we call the geographic container that's very stable. So you can get year by year data and you can compare them across the same geography. So you know that that geography hasn't changed, okay? And then we'll go into county, minor civil divisions, and places. Places and MCDs really depend on the state, mostly in the Northeast from like Pennsylvania, New Jersey on. We have these minor civil divisions, which are townships or boroughs or villages. And then we also have places, which are a smaller geography. So for instance, a place such as this Green City is surrounded by Jones Township. And these types of geographies are dictated by law. I know in Maryland, a lot of the functions are run by the county or Baltimore City. So we also have data by county. So I just wanted to show you kind of like a quick snapshot of all the kind of like local geographies that you might be dealing with when you are grabbing census data. Okay. I wanted to pull this map up. We have this really neat tool on our website called TigerWeb. So it's TIGERWEB. And it's a viewer showing census geography for all the different types of geography that the census collects. And I like to use this with people who don't have a mapping application or a GIS application, but they want an idea or they want to kind of create a map that shows different types of census geography. So what I did was, I used to live in Baltimore many years ago off of Park Avenue and Monument. So I worked downtown. So I always passed the branch of the Enoch Library that's close to where I live. So I placed a dot. You can use the TigerWeb to sort of geocode or put in an address, and the system will give it an X and Y and place it on a map. So that's here where this blue dot is. So this kind of gives you an idea of how census geography nests into each other. So all of these little blocks that of the 2000, these are the individual blocks. Then they accumulate into a block group. So you'll see a block group 1 and a block group 4. And all of these block groups nest within this census tract 401. Okay, I have a better snapshot later on, but I just kind of want to give you an idea of what the landscape looks like for census geography. Okay, so there is the library. There's the census tract the library is in, and it tells you the block group. Actually, this is block group 2. Okay, very easy. So here's the library. Here's the block it's in. And then here's what it looks like in TigerWeb. One of the neat things about TigerWeb is that you can pull up aerial photos so you can really see where things are located. So I know I've worked a lot with grant writers who say, you know, we want to put together a grant for an after-school program, or maybe a program for, or it could be a church for their elder members of their church. And they said, this is where we're located, and we want to do a program for maybe a half mile or the 10 or 15 census blocks that surround their facility. So this is a great way to get that geography, because that way you can use that geography. And when you go into our data tools, you know what types of areas to get data for. So here's a little bit more of that nesting concept that I spoke about. Here we have block groups at the bottom that nest into census tracts, into counties, states, regions, and the nation. And you can see off the nation some of the geography that will nest. For instance, if you get zip code data, you can get zip code data, but you can't get county data. You can't get state data for zip codes. And that's what that branch means, okay? So we have data for about 930,000 geographic entities. So you can potentially get data for over 35,000 communities. So there's a lot of data on our website. So I'm going to mention really quickly 2 data sources, especially because we're in a decennial year. So we do the decennial census every 10 years, and that's a temporary operation where we go out every 10 years and we collect data. That data that's collected, that's considered the official count of the population. So on this decade's census form, there were basic questions that were asked. The American Community Survey is totally different. We do that every year. So we do it even though we are doing the decennial census. And we will get questions from people who say, oh, I already did the census. Why am I getting another form? Chances are they were probably in the American Community Survey as well. This is a monthly survey of the population. So all throughout a year, we're sending out the survey randomly to different housing units throughout the nation. So we don't know who lives in these housing units, but we know where they're located. We have a big file called the master address file, where we have the residential addresses throughout the nation. So every quarter, a random selection of these housing units all across the nation are selected for this survey. So this is a survey, so these are characteristics. While the decennial census is the official count, these are characteristics, because only about 5% of the US population every year gets the American Community Survey. And one of the neat things about the ACS is you can get 2 different sample sets. You can get a 12-month sample and a 5-year sample. So what that means is if you're a really big city or county and your population is 65,000 or over, you can get a year sample, which has 12 months of data, or a 5-year sample that has 60 months worth of data. Any other type of geography that has 65,000 or less only gets the 5-year sample. And that's because the margins of error that are available. There's a smaller margin of error on a 5-year sample than there is on a 1-year. So I just kind of want to give you an overview of the types of topics that you'll find in the American Community Survey. So you'll see stuff like ancestry, fertility, language information, school enrollment. You'll have your basic demographic data. We have economic data on workers and people, so you can see how people are commuting to work, how long is it taking for them to get to work. People that are in the food stamps or SNAP program, what kinds of health insurance do people have. We have information on the housing stock, and this is a really great opportunity to look at, especially if you're doing fair housing or you're looking at housing development. You can see what's going on in the housing market. So you can see whether or not they have computer and internet usage, what's the value of homes, how old are their homes, how many are owned versus rented, what kinds of utilities do they have. There's a lot of really great information that comes from the American Community Survey. So I have a couple snapshots of what the ACS website and what our website looks like. So to search for this, you can browse by survey or program, or on our website, just type in American Community Survey, and it'll take you to our landing page. So you get information about the survey. If you're in the survey, you can respond to it. I can show you how to get some data from there, guidance for data users. We put together some new products because of the COVID pandemic, looking at households and how they're being affected by it, and also how are business being affected by the pandemic. So we're actually doing very timely information, which is really neat, so we can show people the value of census data, in a time like this. So on the American Community Survey page, under data tools and tables and tools, you can get profiles that are already kind of created for you, and you can just go ahead and use that data. So you can do a data profile, you can do a narrative profile, and a subject table profile. So I just clicked on data profile. So these are the 5-year profiles. You can get data back to 2014, and it's limited to a certain levels of geography. So you can get data for the entire nation. You can get data for your state. You can get data for your county or data for your place. But this one I really like. This is called the narrative profile. So you can get geography down to the census tract, the zip code, a metropolitan or micropolitan area, or an American Indian area, Alaska Native, Hawaiian homeland. So what you do is, for instance, in this example, I clicked on census tract. I said, okay, I want data from Maryland. I used the pull down, and I selected Baltimore City. And because I had that information from where the library was located, I knew it was in Census Tract 401. I was able to just go ahead and select the tract. And then I clicked narrative profile, and I got this profile with all this cool information about that census tract. Okay, so that's sort of like a very quick way to get data. For those of you that maybe are more advanced users, or you want to play and learn about our Data.Census.Gov, this is what the landing page looks like. You can go right to the site from here. We have some really good information about the platform itself. There's those data profiles I showed you, and tables and maps. So this is when you click that Data.Census.Gov button, you're going to get to this page. You can go ahead and type, I'm looking for, etc. If you remember when you used Fact Finder, you would have to either like search for a geography and then go ahead and search for your information. Here you can almost form a question, and the system will show you, based on the keywords you put in, the information that you are looking for. The bottom of that page, there's also some other tools I just wanted to point out. We have Quick Facts, which is basically, you can type in or select an area and get some really quick information, demographic and economic data. For business data, if you want to look up for a particular industry and you know the NAICS code or don't know the code for that industry, you can look up the code. Census Business Builder, which is one of my favorite tools. I use this a lot with people who own businesses. They can look up their product and then get information about their target market based on a geography. This is, if you haven't seen this already, this is our 2020 census response rate map. So you can go and see how your community is doing versus the nation. And then we have some small area income poverty estimates from one of our other applications that we do. So there's a plethora of information available by the census. I'm going to go through some slides. In the event we get disconnected or something happens, I always have static slides. And then that way, I also want to get you guys a copy of the presentation so you can take this with you, sort of as a manual. So explore census data. I'm interested in looking for Ancestry for Baltimore City, Maryland. So I click on that and hit search. So this is what Data.Census.Gov gives me. It gives me a table, says people reporting single ancestry. My geography is Baltimore City, Maryland. It tells me it comes from the American Community Survey, the years of the data, and then the table number, okay? So it also gives you other tables that have data on ancestry. On the right here, it gives you could get a profile for Baltimore City and then some other related searches, okay? So what I do is I'm going to click on that table, and it's going to give me quite a bit of things that I can do. So here's the ancestry. It's a bigger table, but it gives you an ancestry, so which you can look across and say, hey, I'm interested in people who said that they were American. I can see American, and I can see the estimate. So approximately, according to the 2018 American Community Survey, 8,987 people say they were of American ancestry, and we give you the margin of error. So the margin of error is plus or minus 816. So this could be an additional 816 or a minus 816. So that's how the margin of error works. So if I wanted to click on another table on the live program, I can just click on these tables, and this would update for me. Now, I want to show you, I want to get some data by census tract, and not just for the entire city. So when you're on a table, you can go ahead and select the geography tab, and then you would just follow the Data.Census.Gov lead, and it'll tell you. So you're going to scroll down and say, I want data by census tract. The system's going to say, okay, pick your state. Once you click on your state, it'll say, all right, pick your county. Then you scroll down and say, I want Baltimore City. You can select all the tracts or you can select individual tracts, which is really cool. One thing I want you to make sure is if you don't want the data for Baltimore City, just click on the X and you'll get the data for all of the census tracts. You can leave Baltimore City there if you'd like, but if you say, I just want a table of all the tracts by Ancestry, that's what I want to search for, you can go ahead and just hit, close, and it'll update on you. Okay? So here's our updated table, Ancestry, by that 5-year estimate. If by instance you're trying to do a search by census tract and it's not coming up, double check your product. Census tract data is only available for the 5-year estimates, so you can hit the pull down and switch from the 1-year to the 5-year, and then it'll let you go ahead, go back to that geography page and then select your census tracts. But then see, you'll have your census tracts, you'll have your estimate and your margin of error. So here's this tract, etc., etc. There's a couple things that you can do at this point. You can download the information, and this is still sort of in beta format. So when you hit download, you're going to get these Excel files that you have to bring into Excel, and then you'll have the information, and you're going to have an Excel sheet that kind of decrypts what the headlines are, because it'll give you this like little jumble of like letters and numbers telling you what each item is. I say if you're an advanced user, go ahead and do it that way. I'm going to show you a shortcut for everyone else who just wants to copy and paste what they see on the screen and post it in an Excel file. One of the other things I want to show you is how to make a really quick map using the data that's on the screen. But this is the screen where if you're not comfortable using all those Excel files or it's very complicated, they've created a shortcut. If you just want to take what's on here, hit Control and A in the very first cell, and then open Excel and paste it into Excel, and you're going to get the data that way. Because we got a lot of feedback from the public saying, I can't decipher these tables. Can you give me an easier way to do it? So this is sort of a workaround at this point. Okay, so back to our table. So I went to the little mapping button, and I will say one of the quirky things is it zooms in to the center of the nation. So right now we have to pan our way east, but once you get there, you'll see Baltimore City and you have your legend. Okay, so this is really neat. So right now I just chose a variable. I wanted to look at how many people during the 2018 5-year ACS said that they were Italian. So here's the breakdown. Here's our legends. So the areas with, the darker areas are where the people who say that they're of Italian ancestry. So this is a really cool map. There's no way right now, I know in FactFinder, for those of you who may have used it, you would be able to get a shape file for the GIS users and the table and then combine them. That's not available yet. And there's no printing function of a PDF of the table. So I'm hoping in the next few months, those will be some new things that will be available on here. But you can always kind of just do a screenshot if you wanted to use this map for a product. Okay. You can also go ahead and make some changes to the legend. So if you can change your colors, you can change how it's classified. So for those of us that are into mapping, you can kind of change the data a little bit to get a different kind of looking map. So that's also available from the map tab. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the table tab. If you go back to tables, you can filter out our different types of data based on our advanced filters. So if you wanted a different topic, you can click on topic. We've already gone over the geography tab, so I've shown you how that works. If you want to filter out for a particular year, I don't know why 2022 is there, so let's ignore that. But you can get data for different years. You can just click on them. You can choose particular surveys, and if you're doing business data, you can filter out by code. Okay, this is somewhat familiar for those of us that used FactFinder. Okay, so I think I did an example on this presentation, or I can do a live one where I'm looking for poverty data for Baltimore City. So basically I filtered it out by topics. I went to topics, I went to poverty. Under income and poverty, you can get income and poverty data. So you can also get median income. You can get just generic poverty. And then when I clicked on that, it gave us some other things here. So poverty, if you just want data on how many people are in poverty, you can get that. There's also something called an official poverty measure. That comes from the CPS survey. I get a lot of questions about poverty, and poverty is a really big topic as far as data, and there's different measures. The official poverty measure is the official poverty rate. The poverty data that comes from ACS comes from people who self-responded saying that they maybe are in the SNAP program or a LIHEAP program, or their income level puts them in the poverty level, okay? So the poverty data from ACS is not the official number. I want to make that very clear, okay? But it is data that you can use if you wanted to know about what's going on in your community. So the ACS, the decennial census, it's all self-response. So people who are in those surveys or censuses, they are telling the Census Bureau as to what is going on in their home, okay? That's what self-response means. Okay, so I'm just I'll put this back up at the end of my presentation, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to do the live demo. So let's see if I can get this going. Can someone give me a heads up that you can see my screen? It should say Census.Gov.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, thanks a lot. So this is our website. If you haven't been on here, it's Census.Gov. We're still heavily promoting the census, so you still have an opportunity to respond. So I'm gonna go ahead and just close this out here. So I'll show you quickly, if you wanna get information on the ACS, hover over surveys and programs, and you'll see the American Community Surveys right there, plus all the other surveys that we do. If you wanna go ahead and find our data tools, under Explore Data, there's a lot of information that's on here. I'm going to go to Explore Data Main. You can also go under Data Tools and Apps and you'll find it there, but I'm going to click on Explore Data Main so I can show you how to get to Data.Census.Gov. Okay, super easy. It takes me right to it. And here's the other data tools that I was showing you guys. You just kind of scroll down and you can see everything that we have available. I'll talk a little bit about Census Academy if we have some time at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this blue box. It'll take me to the site. Okay. You can go ahead and type tables. I'm just going to, so let's say I did want to look at poverty in Baltimore City, Maryland, and I'm going to hit search. And what's nice about this, this is taking data off our API. So it's up in our cloud. It renders a lot faster. So for those of you who want to use an API or use an API to update data, you can get access to our API. And as soon as data is released, it updates everything, which is super great. So this is telling us for Baltimore City, Maryland, according to the 2018 ACS, this is the 1 year, not the 5 year. It says 18.4 people are in poverty. So here's that table that I showed you earlier. And then it has other tables that you can look at. You can look at view all tables if you want. There's that little snapshot of Baltimore City if you want to look at that. I'm going to go ahead and just click on this box so we can see the table. So this is for all of Baltimore City, okay? This is table S1701. And it gives us here how the table is broken down by population. It gives you brackets, male versus female, race and Hispanic origin, education. There's a lot of information that's on this table. So this gives you the total of everyone in Baltimore City. It gives you the total of below poverty and the percent below poverty. So that's how this table is broken down, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you how to get the 5-year data. You simply click on here, the down arrow, and you can get the 2018 5-year. But if you wanted other iterations of the ACS, you can just pull them from here. So there's the 5-year data. So now you have your 5-year data. Let's change our geography. You'll hit Customize Table. Okay. What you want to do is you want to click on this little geography guy right here. And then it says show your summary level. So right now we have data for this Baltimore city, but I want to go down and get tract data or county or ZICTA, whatever you want to do. I'm going to select tract. Then you're going to select Maryland, Baltimore City. And here we can select all census tracts within Baltimore City. If it doesn't show up here, click it a couple times, it will show up. I'm going to go ahead and remove the entire geography of the city. I want the city broken down by census tracts. Let's see if it does. It's rendering. I can see it in the background. All right, let's try closing this. Okay. Let's give it a second to catch up. Okay. So you can see it's still, because it's in beta format, it still has a couple of issues. If this isn't working, let me try reloading it. This is why I always do static slides, just in case. Oh, there it goes. It's slowly coming up. All right, well, I'm going to give it another second and then it'll show up. Because one of the things I also want to do is show you on the ACS website how to go ahead and get that information. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Yes, getting a shape now. So if you wanted to get shape files, what you would need to do is go to the geography website. So you know how I went to Census.Gov? If you go under programs, go under geography. Under geography, look for tiger data. That's our shape files. So all of our shape files, they have the latest vintage on there. You can get everything from the nation down to the local level. Right now, you have to get them from the geography website. Okay, so here we are right now. Looks like we've got our data. Okay, so what I want to do is, once again, if you want it to get, oh look, it transposed it. Let me untranspose it. What I did was it flipped the tract here and then put the data here. Transposing is good if you want to also bring your data into Excel. So anyway, if you wanted to go ahead and you're not comfortable with using the download here, what you could do is you'll select in this box that's right here, that's red, hit Control A, and then now you have this. You can just copy and paste this and put it into Excel. But I'll show you the download function. So what it does is it gives you, because we have the 2018 5-year data, it's going to default to that. If you also wanted the 1-year data, you can click on that. So right now the PDF is not available. You can get the CSV. So right now it's telling you you're getting 2 CSV files with the metadata, 2 files with the data, and then a table title. So this will be zipped up, and then you can go ahead and download it and open it up using an application to open up the shape files. I mean the data files. So let's go ahead and do some mapping. So you see how I said how right now it's sort of veering us to the center of the country. So I'm just gonna roll us on over. And as a geographer, I've told them many, many times how much this annoys me. So once you kind of see where we are, just quickly zoom in. Okay. So right now, this is looking at the total for population for whom poverty status is defined. You can go ahead and say, I want to look for information for those that are under 18. You can just quickly switch to that area and it'll give you the map. If you want to customize your map, this is where you can change the product. You can clear your geographies. Here's your legend. You open up that little gear. If you want to change your color, because this is a color that you don't like, you can do something different. And then if you want to change from the classification system and maybe do equal interval, it changes it right on the fly, okay? So that's what's really cool about that. And if you want to go back to the table, you just click on the table. And it'll go back to it, okay? Okay. So I'm going to give this a chance to load. So what I would like to do is I want to quickly just take us back to the census site. And I want to take you through the ACS, because for some people, you don't necessarily need to go into Data.Census.Gov to get the data. You can go through American Community Survey. And I always say, if you're going to use ACS data, take a few minutes to read through here, because there's a lot of information that's going to help you understand how we collect the data, how the data gets released. There's all sorts of technical documentation. We even give you a methodology. So you can see like some of the older questionnaires. You can see some of the different questions that have been answered. It's really neat. If you want to go to data, and like I said, you can do a narrative profile or a data profile and say, I just want to get a profile for a particular census tract. I just tell them what vintage I want, select the tract, same thing like before. I'm going to go to that tract 401. I'm going to get the profile. So for those of you that know this area, when I looked at the profile, I was like, this is exactly, the neighborhood that I lived in. Not many families, mostly single people. It tells you the average household size, the types of the households that are in that census tract. So yep, people living alone. That was me back then. Gives you the marital status, information about nativity and foreign born. Okay. What kind of languages are being spoken? Who speak a language other than English? There's the geographic mobility. Were they in the same residence last year? Did they come from different residences? What's the education level? This is a highly educated group of people who live here. If there was disability status, they'd give us data. Employment status, what kind of industries are people living in, working in, that live in that area? Occupation. So yeah, so this is a nice breakdown because it gives you a graph. It's super easy to read and the datas are there for you. Okay, so I want to push that. This is something that's relatively new on the website here. For those of us that are old FactFinder users, there was a way we could have gotten those profiles through the system, but they're not there anymore. So I just want to check real quick to see if there's anything else I wanted to show you guys. I know that was a really sort of quick demo, but let me see if there are any sorts of questions that are in the chat here, anything. That's a good question. I don't know. I know I've had coworkers that have used Max and they haven't said anything that they haven't been able to use it. So yeah, so okay, that's a really good source. Thank you for that. I'm going to use that myself. But to demonstrate on our website where to go get the geography, go browse by topic. Let me get this out of the way here. Go to geography. Okay. Oh, here's the interactive maps. If you wanted to use the TigerWeb, go under our interactive maps. And here's TigerWeb. I use this a lot with people, like I said, who don't have a GIS or a mapping system, and they want to just go ahead and quickly do a map or locate where a geography is located. This is Tiger Web right here. This is using our Tiger shapefiles and a REST service, and it goes ahead and it creates, you know, these static maps. Let me go back to the beginning. Here's our Tiger line shapefiles under. Then we have the cartographic boundary file. So if you, for instance, I live in New Jersey and I just want to get a shapefile of New Jersey and I don't necessarily need all the intricate shoreline, I can just grab a boundary file. If that, you know, for Maryland as well, you can just go ahead and do that. Here's the latest vintage is 2019. You can use our web interface to get our shapefiles. You can select the year. You can select what layer you would like to get. Select your state. And then you get here's your zip file right here that has your tracks for Maryland. Okay. I'll check the chat. Okay. Yep. Thanks. So what I'm going to do is let me go ahead and put up my presentation again so that I can, let's see if I can find it here. I'm going to go ahead and put this here and let you guys look at this while I'm talking. So I put these resources on here. So if you want to find out information about the ACS, this is the link here. Here's your link directly to Data.Census.Gov. I'm going to promote Census Academy. This is something we've been doing for a little bit, but we are getting a lot of traction for it. So what we're doing is, obviously, like myself, I usually travel a lot for work, where I go to different places and I do, you know, face-to-face workshops on how to get our data. But because I'm not able to travel now, we're steering people to Census Academy. So DDSs like myself and the other 35 or 40 of us that are out there throughout the nation, we're putting together what we're called data gems. So they're like 2 or 3 minute videos to find something really quickly. So if you want to say, you know, I want to find medium income data, there'll be a little data gem on that. We're working on putting together full courses on different census topics that we're working on now. Those will be available on Census Academy, most likely the end of this year. I'm working on a Census Geo 101 and then a Census Data for GIS. We're doing a couple of them on the API. One is going to be for Python and API. The other one is just going to be an API overview. So, you know, those will be coming out, and they're being taught by subject matter experts. They'll be broken down into modules, and you can kind of sit there and go through them as, you know, as you can, whenever you have time. We also do webinars, usually monthly. There either be population-based ones or ones based on economic data or any of the new releases that are coming out. You can just go to Census Academy topics and you can choose your topic, and you can see all of the pre-recorded webinars that are on there. So that's also an option for people to, you know, get information or see a class on how to do a particular item. Okay. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and see if you guys have anything you need to say, or let me just quickly look at the chat real quick. Okay. Yep. So that's what I have. Here is, oh, let me give you my contact info. This is me. I cover basically from the Philadelphia area down to DC. I have another coworker. So if you have a question about data, if you want to learn how to get a webinar, you can talk to us, or you can go ahead and just email askdata.census.gov. And if you would like someone to give you a webinar or show you some of the resources that we have, you can email them. They're super great. They'll get back to you. And then if we can find someone to assist you for a webinar for your organization, they can get someone for you from our staff. Okay. So thank you guys for coming by. Hopefully you learned a little bit. Definitely my advice for data users is to practice, practice, practice. That's really the best way to learn. How I learned Fact Finder, how I'm learning Data.Census.Gov is going through the webinars and sitting through and just kind of learning how to grab the data. You'll always find something new, which is one of the great things I like about my job. Okay, so thank you guys for watching.
Thanks so much, Noemi. That was awesome, as usual. And of course, it's such a huge part of our vital signs report. I think about a third of all of our data comes from the American Community Survey. So reminder to everybody to fill out their 2020 census form if they haven't done that already. Tell your neighbor.
Still have time.
Sure, we have better data for Vital Signs 20 when it comes out.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. This was session number 18. Woohoo! Please fill out the survey. If you have time to keep joining us, we will have our 19th session at 1 o'clock, where we some of our data science students who are actually just becoming familiar with census data. So you can ask them lots of questions about what they've learned. And then if you have a lot of time, please join us for our virtual happy hour at 3 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.
You're very welcome.